Hey everybody, it's James Freeman. I'm going to show you a few videos here today that show that use of force legislation is changing. Now I use the word legislation intentionally rather than the word law, because law doesn't change, only legislation does. Legislation is what the ruling class writes on paper, allowing everybody else to do or not do. The actual law always has been and always will be the same. You have no right to initiate force against another person who has not initiated force against you. You do, on the other hand, have every right to defend yourself against those who initiate force against you. This is an incredibly simple concept that anybody can understand. But over time, the ruling class has changed the legislation to actually say that some people with magical badges have the right to initiate force against those who have not taken life, liberty, or property from anyone, and that the victims being attacked have no right to defend themselves. As absurd as that sounds, most of the sheep in our society actually still believe that, and therefore, the simple principle-based concepts of this new legislation is quite foreign to them. The first new piece of legislation is out of California, where they changed the legislation to say that cops can only kill people when it's necessary. We needed legislation to say that you shouldn't kill people unless it's absolutely necessary?
Today, Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 392, the Stephen Clark Law, named after the unarmed man who was shot in his backyard in Sacramento last year. Clark's family and other relatives of people who died in police shootings joined the signing ceremony. Law enforcement groups initially opposed the bill until some late changes were made to it.
Wait, what?
Law enforcement groups initially opposed the bill until some late changes were made to it.
What could law enforcement possibly be opposed to in a bill that says that they can't murder people anymore?
The governor says it will bring needed change.
And the idea that over 100 people, 162 people in 2017 were killed in police shootings in the state of California is unacceptable. It's not good for law enforcement, and it's certainly not good for individuals in the communities that have been disproportionately impacted.
The law changes when police can use deadly force to only when necessary instead of only when reasonable.
So to clarify what that means, it means that no change at all has been made, but we made it look like we made changes to satisfy the public.
It also allows prosecutors to consider the actions of the officer leading up to any shooting, and it prohibits firing on fleeing felons unless they pose an immediate danger. The law takes effect January 1st.
Oh, look at all the sheep standing around him that think that less of their friends and family members are going to be murdered by police, or that if they do get murdered by police, that police are going to be held accountable. So the second video here says that Indiana legislators, not to be mistaken with lawmakers because law's already been made and can't be changed, made new legislation that people can defend themselves against violent thugs that attack them. Again, this has always been a natural human right. So we didn't need legislation to tell us that it's okay to use self-defense.
But it hailed. It is the first law of its kind. Citizens allowed to shoot police officers who trespass illegally.
Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano is here to break down the new rule. All right, this is going to take place in Indiana.
It is.
What is it?
Well, it's a law that allows people who lawfully own weapons to use those weapons against the police when the police are behaving illegally. For example, police attempting to arrest someone without an arrest warrant, police entering property without a search warrant, police coming into the wrong property, or police actually committing a crime. Now, this was generated by a horrific case in Indiana where the police broke down the wrong door and arrested the wrong person, and he kept trying to say to me, "I'm not the guy you want, it's next door," and the more he resisted, the more they pummeled him.
That sounds like the Texas law.
Texas also has a statute that if, for example, they're after Brian Kilmeade, but they arrest Steve Ducey, and he goes, "I'm Ducey, I'm not Kilmeade."
Easy to confuse the two.
Easy to confuse the two. Ducey can, in Texas, Ducey can use force to resist
because I'm not the guy you came to get.
Correct.
I'm confused. So if the cops break down your house and you know that you've done nothing wrong, you can shoot them?
Yes. in the state of Indiana, yes. Well,
What if they have a warrant? If they have a warrant.
If they have a warrant.
Look at how uncomfortable these two sheep news anchors are just talking about the idea of using self-defense against a violent attacker.
You cannot. So, look, the burden is on you to do the right thing. If you're not sure whether or not they have the warrant, obviously you can't use the weapon. You can't use the weapon to escape from lawful confinement. You can't use the weapon to initiate a crime. You can't initiate the
There's a
confrontation.
lot of small print here.
There's no fine print. You have the right to self-defense and no right to initiate force.
The police.
Yeah.
Where'd this come from?
From the laws of nature, you moron!
Well, this was enacted by the legislature and signed by Governor Mitch Daniels.
Mitch Daniels didn't give you this right, guys. It's inherent. You were born with it. But if they can convince you that Mitch Daniels gave it to you, then Mitch Daniels can take it away.
Why?
Because of this case in Indiana that received tremendous publicity, where the police went to the wrong house and beat up the wrong person, and he attempted to resist, and then he sued the police, and he lost the lawsuit.
Isn't there a big leap from that to being able to shoot the police?
Well, as we were talking earlier, the state of Texas has had a statute where you can shoot the police, and people generally don't do it because the police are a little bit more careful.
Texas police being careful about not breaking the law has nothing to do with why Texans don't shoot cops. Texans don't shoot cops who are initiating unlawful force against them because it would be signing your own death warrant. Texas also has legislation that you can film in public, but people get arrested for it all the time, and some of them even get convicted. People don't do what the legislation says they can do because they know that the legislation means absolutely nothing. The ruling class rules and you don't. So whatever the cop, judge, or politician sitting in front of you feels at the very moment is what the rules are. And despite what the legislation says, you better just shut up and obey.
Right.
Because they know the homeowner may be legally armed
well,
as they
that's
are.
interesting. So where do you fall on this?
I'm in favor of the statute. I think it will lessen the tension between police and law-abiding citizens, and the example is Texas.
Let's just hope more cops don't get shot.
Correct. Nobody wants anybody to get shot, but nobody wants the police to break down the wrong door or to commit crime in the name of being a police officer.
Right, and that is now the law in Indiana.
Yes,
Right.
it is.
So the masters are changing the legislation to please the people, but please, people, don't be mistaken. Just because you have the right to do something, and just because the legislation says that you're allowed to do it, does not mean that you're going to be okay after you do it. This legislation is only meant to keep you calm and keep you from revolting. You're not actually supposed to do it. And if you do, you'll still end up in the same cage or casket that you would have before this new legislation. Welcome to the land of the fees and the home of the slaves. Just shut up and obey.